I'm watching the Lions do what they do. And look, I don't know that any coach is going to match Dan Campbell's aggressiveness, but I started thinking about Dan Campbell because I was not in on Dan Campbell when he got hired. I thought he was a goofball at the podium. Yeah. I don't like walk around head coaches that don't coordinate one side of the football. I'm not totally in favor of those type of coaches. When Campbell took over the offense for a short stint, they nosedived. They were terrible. But then he hired a couple of really good coordinators. He coached up the guys that he had there, and he had a GM that got him a bunch of really good players as well. And now here in year 4, they're probably the best football team in the NFL. And so it's tough to compare year 2 DeMeco Ryans to year 4 Dan Campbell. But as I watched that game, I kind of wondered, does DeMeco Ryans possess the ability to be the head coach of one of the best football teams in football 2 years from now? And I couldn't find a way to say no to it, but I wasn't like, absolutely, yes, he's going to be the head coach of one of the best football teams in football in the next couple of years. And I feel like that's probably because some of the hiccups we've seen over this season, could they get coached out? Like the discipline on his team, not just the penalties, like we hear penalties and discipline kind of associated with each other, but just like he's explaining, hey, the way we win is everybody does what they're supposed to do. Well, they lose. Well, it's because guys aren't doing what they're supposed to do. So like the coaches allow that to happen or coach that or couldn't get the guys to get to that level. Like the discipline, the penalties were disappointing. And then the big thing for DeMeco Ryans is he going to be able to make tough decisions with coordinators? And is he going to be able to hire a really good coordinator for the offense? Because obviously he takes care of the defense. It's different than Dan Campbell. Is he going to be able to hire a really good coordinator or find a really good offensive mind for his offensive system? That to me is the biggest element of, hey, he's going to be the best coach, or he's going to be one of the coaches of the best teams in football in a couple of years.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think the Lions kind of showed it yesterday, and they kind of been showing it all year. Like they have a lot of injuries on defense, and they've still been able to get the job done, and they've been able to adjust accordingly and bring pressure when they need to bring pressure and all that type of stuff and step up. You can't really do that. It's not as easy to do that on offense. Like on defense, you can make do and you can play at a championship level whenever your defense gets stripped. You lose Aiden Hutchinson, like we're not like they lose one of the 5 best players in the league, and they're still make doing. And it seems like it's easier to do that on defense than it is on offense. What the Lions were able to do is they got a lot of skill position guys, man. They got a lot of young skill position talent, and that's where they're
running backs.
They drafted Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round. They drafted Jamison Williams before the Texans. I thought the Texans liked him at the time. They got Sam Laporta. They got St. Brown the same year the Texans got Nico Collins. So essentially they got their wide receiver 1 just like the Texans did when the Texans got Nico and then the Lions got St. Brown. But what they did after that is they put together an array of a lot of like young, explosive skill position guys in every area. And that's what the Texans are going to have to do. So I think it's going to be as much on Nick Caserio and DeMeco and whatever they want to do. And they're going to have to add some star-studded, talented skill position talent around CJ Stroud. Because ironically enough, we go back to the draft. I know some people might roll their eyes at it, but like Jared Goff was one of the most constant CJ Stroud comparisons. And it was Goff and it was Burrow and it was kind of there. But I think that if you look at what Goff has around him, I think the Texans are going to have to find some sort of way, and they're going to have to go all in on skill position guys on offense. And I'm not saying that they made the mistake this past year in not doing so, because I did still think it was as much of a move, but you only have so many moves to make. Like they fixed the defense and they added young defensive talent and they did that. But now they're going to have to do what Detroit did, and they're going to have to set out. They're almost going to have their Laporta Gibbs type of draft. In some way, shape, or form. And they're going to have to add skill position guys. It is interesting, though, when you mention Dan Campbell, because I know what you say about walk-around head coaches. It seems like he does a good job of delegating responsibilities. And I don't know that DeMeco is really, from what we've seen right now in like every area, I don't know that DeMeco Ryans possesses the balance of delegation on offense and defense. Like that's kind of where I'm at. Like he's an even better defensive coach than I thought he was, and I already thought he was elite. but I did not anticipate it to be so defensive minded. And you can look at the way the team is coached. You can look at the way the team is discussed. The Tennessee game where DeMeco says, the offense gave us enough and the defense has got to win it. And you can even go to this week when he was talking about the Azeez Al-Shaair situation, and he has no sympathy for the offense, and he's talking about they're bending the rules, and Jacksonville overreacted, and he's providing like the defensive point of view. I do think that's going to be something like one of DeMeco's biggest challenges, and Dan Campbell faced the challenge too. Like, he had to find the coordinators. There's always going to be a crossroads moment. Like, how many times John Harbaugh has had to evolve, like, as Ravens coach? Like, he's got, like, the way that they've won, there've been like 3 different ways in which they've won. Like, Andy Reid had to evolve. Like, so it's going to happen. It's a small sample size, but I do just wonder, like, if DeMeco is like too defensive minded to either delegate the right guy or put the offense in the position to where they can get the job done. But I do think also it's about the players, as we previously mentioned.
Yeah, the player comparison is a really good one, and I think it's an interesting note. They have Jameson Williams as their number 2 wide receiver. That's this guy in his 3rd year in the league. The Texans' number 2 was 31-year-old Stephon Diggs. Now, Diggs is good and was good this year, but he's not an option anymore. He hurt his knee. He's a free agent at the end of the year. It's like, you got to go find that Jameson Williams. Well, you kind of hoped it was Tank Dell. That year 2 hadn't been really good. Now, Tank Dell's year 1 was better than Jameson Williams, either his first 2 years, but he was hurt one of them and then just was still lingering with the injury, it felt like, in the second one. But Jameson Williams has been really good this year, 3rd year. So, like, you got to hope a little bit for Tank, but then you still got to go find more young guys. You need another running back. The thing about DeMeco, though, if he didn't call the defense, would they be better in other areas?
No.
Yeah, see, I don't think the trade-off is there. Like, I wouldn't want someone else calling the defense just to have DeMeco be like, hey, make sure Kate Stover's not lined up off sides.
He has to call the defense. It's just a matter of being able to trust the right people or figure it out on offense. It's early in the process. The other thing that I think is going to be interesting, and I'm not trying to turn this into an off-season discussion, but we talked about, being proactive with the tight ends and not just settling with what's going on in the room. I think they're going to have to strongly consider a wide receiver in round 1 or 2, because the other thing that the Texans are going to start facing as we talk about where the Lions are, and I think this is important because you're talking about Dan Campbell in year 4 versus DeMeco in year 2. When DeMeco's in year 4, he's going to be paying CJ Stroud. He's going to be paying Will Anderson. He's going to be paying Derek Stingley. So you want to find guys at the most expensive positions that are young, that can be on their rookie deal, just like you found Kamari Lassiter at cornerback, just like you hope that Blake Fisher, by the time that time comes around, is one of your starting tackles. So wide receivers are extremely expensive. If you can find a wide receiver, it's not, again, everyone's going to be talking offensive line, and I'm not disputing that, but you need to kind of play chess and checkers at the same time too, because you're gonna be in a really interesting situation when that time comes around.
I'm tired of young guys on the offensive line. I want battle tested dudes. I want old guys.
Well, Shaq Mason's battle tested.
Yeah, I want somebody on their 2nd contract, not their 3rd.
Well, Titus Howard's on his 2nd contract.
Yeah, but I mean, I want battle tested free agents to fill in the interior offensive line issues. That's what I want. I want battle tested free agents.
Like Shaq. So he wants another Shaq.
No. Well, if it's a 1-year deal for the left guard, sure. Okay, figure it out for 1 year. Because you look at Detroit, that's an experienced offensive line that played together a lot. Guys are in there.
They did get sold though.
Right. Sure. Penei Sewell's really good. But Frank Ragnow's been a center in the league for a long time now. He's really good. I mean, I think Herb Street called him out by name like 20 times last night. So
26.
Yeah, 26 times last night. So it's not a 1-for-1 comparison because there's obviously differences in the organizations, but like, it's former player deep into his career as the head coach. And Campbell was coaching while DeMeco was still playing. So like, there's still like a catch up thing for DeMeco Ryans.
Yeah. But he's been around, man. He's been around.
Campbell started coaching and I mean, to be honest, Campbell started coaching when he still had a uniform because he didn't play that much. But I mean, he finished in 2009 and was coaching right immediately in 2010. He was an interim head coach at one point, and then now he's in his 4th year as the Lions head coach, and it's worked out really well.
By the way, that was a dumbass decision yesterday. Like, that was a dumbass decision yesterday. And
which one? Going from it for his own 30 or going for it at the end of the game?
Both. Like, he's a bit like, he's lucky that Goff was able to. The football gods tried to screw him over there. That is going to come tumbling down eventually. That is bit coaching gone wrong.
And there's one thing too that we haven't mentioned about the Lions is they somehow, for 2 consecutive seasons, held on to the best offensive mind in the building.
Yeah, which is interesting.
And
then
they're
gonna have to face him twice a year, though, I anticipate.
Yeah, so the Ben Johnson situation,
I think he's going in the division, would you say?
I would tell you that if he was picking, he'd probably pick Chicago.
I think he's going to the Bears. I think mark that. He's going to the Chicago Bears, and they'll see him. And then we'll see how they handle that.
Yeah, and so bouncing. Well, and Aaron Glenn might leave too.
Yeah.
So let's see how Campbell bounces back from both coordinators. Now they got good players, so that's ultimately what matters.
Really good players, really good
players, and really good young players too.
Yep.
Like, they got really good young players. They're not super veteran laden in some of those key spots. So that's just something I was kind of thinking about last night as I watched. I'm like, yeah, Dan Campbell, year 4, coach of the best team in the NFL. Could that be DeMeco Ryans? I say yes, it could. I'm not for sure. Like, yep, it's going to be him though, just because that coordinator hire for the offensive mind is going to be a really interesting one.
Yeah, it's localizing it here on SNL. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots. Subscribe on all podcast platforms.